Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to another session of economy this week, wherein we are going to take up all the important economy related articles which have appeared in various newspapers from 7th to 13th of January 2023 and we'll be analyzing all these articles. Let's begin the discussion. The first very important article is the scheme announced by the government to promote digital payments. Now, what is the importance of the scheme and what is the reason it has been announced? Let's try and understand this. First and foremost, all of us use digital payments whenever we purchase certain goods or services in the market. We might be making the payment using BHIM, or we might be making these particular payments using, let's say, a debit card. But whatever mode that we use to make a digital transaction, certain infrastructure is required whenever such transactions are supposed to be completed. For example, if I go to a petrol bunk, purchase certain amount of petrol, and I give a debit card, which means the seller has to have a machine, handheld machine or a point of sales machine, where either they will swipe the card or dip the card and complete the transaction. But whenever they use the card, certain information has to be transmitted to the bank and back to this machine, which in simple terms means what? Infrastructure is required to develop all of this or to complete the transactions. But more importantly, understand this point now. To develop this infrastructure, the banks or the service providers need to spend money. Earlier, there is a concept called as a merchant discount rate, MDR, wherein whenever such services were provided, certain charges were imposed by the service providers. And the logic behind that was, I will impose the charges, collect the charges, use the money to develop the infrastructure which is required to complete or facilitate such transactions. Government of India, starting 1st of January 2020, remember this, Government of India, starting 1st of January 2020, asked the banks not to impose and collect merchant discount rate, which means now there was a pressure on the service providers to provide the service, develop the infrastructure or the ecosystem that is required to provide all of these facilities, but they were not allowed to impose and collect charges for providing such services. As a result of this, many of the service providers requested Government of India either to allow them to impose MDR or provide certain incentives for them to develop and continue to provide the infrastructure as well as the services to complete digital payments or digital transactions. Following this, Government of India announced last year a 1,300 crore rupees scheme to promote digital payments. That is incentive scheme to promote digital payments. Now for the current financial year, right? I repeat, for the current financial year, Government of India has doubled up this amount from 1,300 crore to 2,600 crore rupees. This is one very important point. Now under this, what will be promoted? Of course, digital payments. But what kind of digital payments? One, whenever you use RuPay debit cards, or you are going to make a payment using BHIM UPI, Unified Payments Interface, even for that matter, UPI Lite and 123 pay transactions will be promoted under this. In simple terms, the banks, whenever they facilitate the transactions using any of these modes, they are given incentives under this new initiative of Government of India. So please be very, very careful. Not all the debit card payments, only the RuPay debit card payments are being covered under this incentive scheme of the government, which will be run for the financial year, that is one financial year. So these are certain very important points regarding the incentive scheme of the Government of India to promote digital payments. And this is important for a simple reason. The number of digital payments have been increasing in the last couple of years. Especially the mode of digital payments took off during the days of the pandemic, and since then, Government of India has been taking various measures to promote increased digital payments or adoption of the digital payments within the domestic market. So these are the certain very important points. Please be very, very careful. Now, based on this discussion, I have given an MCQ here. Consider the following statements regarding incentive scheme to promote digital payments. It will promote digital payments made from all the debit cards. Statement 1 is wrong. It will be implemented for a period of 5 years. Again, the statement is wrong. So both the statements are wrong. Right option for the question will be option D, neither 1 nor 2. Next, new customs rules have been announced by the government, which will come into force from 11th of February. Now, why these new customs rules have been announced? And is there any technical name that you need to remember for UPSC preliminary examination? The name of these rules is important. Please make a note of this. The name is the Customs Assistance in Value Declaration of Identified Imported Goods Rules 2023. And as already mentioned, these rules will come into force from 11th of February 2023. Now, what are these rules? Let me give you a simple idea first here. Imagine you are the Government of India and you tell me, I am the importer by the way, you tell me, whenever I import this particular, let's say, marker, I will have to pay 10% customs duty. I'll just show you a simple calculation, don't get into the technicalities of it. And let's say hypothetically, I will report to you saying that the value of the marker is 100 rupees, which means 10% of the marker value, that will be the customs duty, will be 10 rupee customs duty that I pay to you. Now, what if in reality what has happened is the actual price of the marker is 150 rupees, but while reporting to you, I reported this as a value of 100 rupee, which means if I apply 10% customs duty on this 150 rupees, I should be paying to you 15 rupees customs duty. But by under-reporting, by reporting a lower value of the import, what I've done is I've paid lower value of customs duty to the government. Now, don't you think this is basically the loss of tax revenues for the government? So, there have been certain concerns regarding the importers who are not reporting the right value of the imports, and the concern is that the amount of taxes that they are paying to the Government of India are lower than what they are supposed to pay. In order to address this, now Government of India has launched or will be implementing these rules starting 11th February. Under these new set of rules, certain goods have been identified, and if there is a concern that certain importers who are importing these goods, they are not rightly reporting the information, that is the value of the imported goods, to the authorities, then further documentation, further proof will be asked from them. And only upon providing all the required documents or the proof to the government or the tax officials, these imports, after paying the taxes, will be allowed to be imported into India. So this is basically, in a nutshell, why these rules have been announced by the government. Next article, NPCI says it will allow non-residents from 10 countries to use UPI, Unified Payments Interface. Now, what is this idea? The non-residents such as NRIs earlier also were allowed to use UPI. Please be very, very careful. Even earlier, even before the announcement of this, they were allowed to use UPI. But one of the very important features of UPI is that there is a concept of SIM binding. SIM binding means what? A UPI address is connected to a mobile number. Simple. Now in case of these NRIs, they were allowed to use UPI, but because the SIM binding was the requirement, they were not allowed to use the foreign numbers, they were allowed to use only Indian mobile numbers. And that was what was allowed by NPCI earlier in order to allow the NRIs to start using UPI to make transactions. But over a period of time, there have been various requests which have been sent to NPCI requesting NPCI to allow usage of UPI by the NRIs not using the Indian mobile number rather than using the foreign mobile numbers itself. And agreeing to this, NPCI now says we are going to allow the NRIs from 10 countries. Which are these 10 countries? Singapore, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Oman, Qatar, USA, Saudi Arabia, UAE and the United Kingdom. So the NRIs in these 10 countries now can use their foreign mobile numbers and get or start using the UPI services, usually to conduct transactions to send or receive money using this UPI facility. But please understand this, if they want to utilize this UPI, now they will have to have, now in the sense earlier also they were bound to have this, these will have to have NRE rupee bank accounts, non-resident external rupee bank accounts. Even in the earlier videos we have been discussing what are these NRE accounts, etc, etc. So have a look at all of these features, can be asked in the UPSC preliminary examination. Now what is the use of this? What is the use of allowing the NRIs to start utilizing UPI? The expectation is that NRIs now don't have to switch over to Indian mobile numbers to start utilizing UPI. They can use their foreign mobile numbers itself to start transmitting or let's say transferring the funds using these NRE or for that matter NRO bank accounts within the domestic market, which will facilitate adoption of UPI not only within the Indian mobile numbers, even outside India, that is the foreign mobile numbers now will be allowed to use UPI. So these are certain very important points regarding the decision of NPCI to allow NRIs to use UPI. Now based on this, I've given an MCQ. Consider the following statements. Until now, NRIs were barred from using UPI. Statement 1 will be wrong. They were allowed to use the UPI, but the condition was that they are supposed to use the domestic mobile numbers, that is the telephone numbers within the domestic market, not foreign mobile numbers. UPI allows P2P and P2M transactions. It's basically a factual information. It is one of the features of the UPI. What is P2P? Peer-to-peer. P2P simply stands for peer-to-peer transactions. That is from one person to another person. Can I transfer funds into your account using UPI? Of course, yes. Can you send money to me? Again, I'm not asking. I'm just basically giving an example. Can you send money to me using again the UPI? Of course, yes. So peer-to-peer transactions allowed. Peer-to-merchant. P2M simply means peer-to-merchant. So P2P and P2M, both the transactions are allowed using the UPI. So second statement is right. Right option for the question will be option B, only 2 is correct. Let me go to the next article. Under the Parvatmala Yojana, Government of India so far has received 250 proposals. Now some of the articles which are being covered in this week's discussion, these were the announcements which have been done by the Government of India in the budget. That is for the current financial year, some of the budget proposals, they are being either implemented or they are being covered in the week's articles. So please be very, very careful. Now let's start here. Government of India, that is the Finance Minister, in the budget for the current financial year announced a new Yojana, that is the Parvatmala Yojana, or the English name for this is National Ropeway Development Program, NRDP. Under this initiative of NRDP, Government of India wanted to promote construction and the maintenance of the Parvatmalas, that is ropeway infrastructure under public-private partnership. Remember this. Under the public-private partnership, Government of India is promoting the development of ropeway projects. Why? What is the reason why Government of India is promoting it? Simple. One, we will be able to attract private sector investment. That is one, of course, the outcome of this. Second, this will be used as a mode of a transportation, especially in some of the cities where there is a lot of congestion. The ropeways can be used to reduce the congestion or the traffic. Third very important point, this generally acts as a tourist attraction or the tourist destinations. This will be one of the attractions if developed in these tourist places. So tourism will also be promoted if we can develop ropeway infrastructure projects in these the regions as such. Now following this, the Government of India asked the Ministry of Road, Transportation and Highways. Remember this, MORTH, Ministry of Roadways, Transportation and Highways, to look after the implementation of Parvatmala Yojana or the NRDP. Now, as per the latest information provided here, Government of India so far has received 250 proposals for the development of the ropeway infrastructure projects. And of this, already the information is provided here. Government of India has given 8 ropeway or prioritized 8 ropeway projects worth 4,000 crore rupees. And these will be developing 60-kilometer length of the Parvatmala or the ropeway infrastructure projects under this scheme. Having said so, this is basically an updated information. Having said so, there are certain concerns regarding such infrastructure projects. That is basically the ropeway infrastructure project. What are the concerns? One, until very recently, even the Government of India did not prepare any detailed project report for the development of ropeway infrastructure projects. But the article simply says, Government of India now has started preparing detailed project reports so as to understand what will be the overall impact, what will be certain security features, how much will be the investment, etc. for these ropeway infrastructure projects. And the second concern is regarding safety. I'm pretty sure you must have come across certain incidences or accidents regarding or involving the ropeway infrastructure projects itself in the recent times, specifically attributed to India. So the second feature associated or second concern associated with such infrastructure projects is the safety or the security. And regarding this safety or security, the article itself says the safety is very much paramount, and the Union Home Ministry has written a letter to all the state governments, specifically to ensure that there is a standard operating procedure, SOP, for having a contingency plan in case of a ropeway operations. So these are certain very important points regarding the Parvatmala Yojana or NRDP update. Apart from this, in the newspaper article given here, they have also given different states or different cities where such infrastructure projects are being developed. I don't think so UPSC will ask a question on this. Even if you want to be on a safer side, these are certain very important places where these infrastructure projects are being developed. Please have a glance. Now, a simple MCQ on this. Which of the following is responsible for the implementation of National Ropeways Development Program? Now, many of you will basically say, sir, you already have given the answer. But in the UPSC, just to make it a bit more complicated, rather than using the long form of the ministry, they might give you the short forms or the acronyms of the ministries. So please be very careful. Some of you will be confused. It's not that all of you will be confused. Some of you will be confused looking at the short forms of the ministries. Is it Ministry of the Urban Development? No. Is it the Ministry of Road, Transportation, Highways? Yes. Is it the Ministry of Development of Northeastern Region? Again, the answer is no. Is it the Ministry of Rural Development? Again, the answer is no. The right option for the question is MORTH, Ministry of Roadways, transportation and highways. Right option is option B here. Next article, again an update related to the budget announcement for the current financial year. RBI has announced that it will be issuing 16,000 crore worth of sovereign green bonds in the coming days. That is within the financial year. Again, the idea of a sovereign green bond, that is the green bonds which will be issued by the government used for the development of certain infrastructure projects which are considered environment friendly. The announcement was done in the budget for the current financial year. And finally, following the guidelines which have been issued, following the announcement in the budget, Reserve Bank of India has stated that it will be issuing two tranches, that is the sovereign green bonds in two rounds, one round on 25th January and second round on the 9th of February. Now you don't have to by heart these dates, not relevant for UPSC. But what are the important points here? On 25th January as well as the 9th of February, RBI will be issuing 8,000 crore rupees worth of green bonds on both the days. That is, on each of the day, 8,000 crore rupees worth of sovereign green bonds will be issued, which means on 2 days, the total amount of sovereign green bonds issued will be how much? 16,000 crore rupees. That is the first point. Second very important point, the money that will be raised by issuing these sovereign green bonds will be used for public sector projects. Remember this, can be used for public sector projects that will basically help Government of India in meeting or in reducing the emissions to the environment. In simple terms, can we say that sovereign green bonds will help Government of India to achieve the target of becoming net zero emission by 2070? Again, the answer will be yes. So the public sector projects which will help in reduction of the carbon intensity or carbon emissions to the environment. Third very important point, if you take this 8,000 crore rupees, there will be two types of bonds which will be issued here. Two types of bonds. What are the two types of bonds? One bond which will have a maturity period of 5 years. Remember all these points. Maturity period of 5 years, and another will be the bond which will have a maturity period of 10 years. This is the third very important point. What about the fourth very important point? The bonds that will be issued, that is the sovereign green bonds, these are eligible for repo operations, as well as these will be eligible to be held under the statutory liquidity ratio for the banks. What do you mean by this? Under repo operations, RBI basically allows the banks to borrow, right? And under SLR, certain percentage of the deposits, NDTL, that is held by the banks, will have to be maintained or will have to be kept in the form of cash, in the form of approved securities such as sovereign green bonds, or in the form of gold. But specifically, if you talk about SLR, generally the banks prefer to keep these amount, that is a percentage of the deposits, in the form of bonds or the approved securities. Now when I talk about SLR, I have a question for all of you here. Just think of this and answer. When you say approved securities here under SLR, what do you think? Are the banks allowed to hold state development loans or not? I hope you understand. I've got a very simple question. Under SLR, do you think the banks are allowed to hold the state development loans or not? Whatever your answer is, please provide your answer in the comment section below. Now, the bonds, that is sovereign gold bonds, are eligible for repo operations as well as to be held under the SLR as a form of investments. So these are the four very important features which are associated with the sovereign green bonds. Again, many of you will simply say, sir, you simply told me the features without defining what is a sovereign green bond. I am not defining, I am not discussing the whole concept of SGB for a very simple reason. This is not the first time that we are covering a concept of SGB in the current affairs videos. If you have been following the current affairs videos, even in the earlier videos, we have discussed what are the guidelines, what kind of projects are covered under SGB, right? What is the process, etc., etc. So it is just an update here. It's not the whole discussion of the concept. These are the latest features of the SGB announced by Reserve Bank of India. Please update the information. Now, based on this, I've given an MCQ. Consider the following statements. Globally, the green bonds are generally issued at a discount. Statement 1 is wrong. Now, many of you will be confused. So, what do you mean by discount here? In fact, the right statement is, globally, the green bonds are generally issued at premium. These are issued at premium, so that the cost of the borrowing for the issuer is lower. What do you mean by discount? For example, whenever a bond has a value of 100 rupee, it is sold not at 100 rupee value, in the sense the face value of the bond is 100. It is not issued at 100, it is rather issued, let's say, at 95 rupees, lower than the face value, lower than the value of the bond. This is called as a discount. In case of the sovereign green bond, in order to reduce the cost of the borrowing, these are not issued at discount, rather these are issued at premium. Right, so first statement is wrong. Now again, I've got one more important question to you people. Can you give me any example of a bond speaking from Indian perspective? Focus on the Indian perspective where the bonds are issued at a discount. And again, this question has been asked by UPSC in the prelims. You should know about it. Any bond that you can think of, you don't have to search, you would have read it without realizing it. Any type of an instrument, rather than using the term bond, any type of an instrument in India which is issued at a discount. What is the answer? Type in the comment section. Second statement, sovereign green bonds in India will be eligible for the repo and SLR. It's a factual information. Second statement is correct. So right option for the question will be option B. Only 2 is correct. Let's go to the next article now. The Prime Minister has announced launching of Aspirational Block Program. I'll start using the short form of this, ABP, Aspirational Blocks Program. Important, but be very careful. As of now, the details of the program are not yet announced. Very recently, the Prime Minister basically stated that just like we implemented one more initiative, that is Aspirational Districts Program, we should also implement one more initiative to develop at the block level, that is Aspirational Block Program, ABP. And going forward, the information that was provided was, under the Aspirational Blocks Program, 500 districts would be covered. Remember all these points. 500 districts would be covered across 31 states and union territories. Apart from this, the government also stated that the Aspirational Blocks Program will be modeled on the lines of Aspirational Districts Program. Now, what is this idea of an Aspirational Districts Program? ADP basically is overseen by Niti Aayog. The oversight of ADP is by the Niti Aayog. And the Aspirational Districts Program, which has been implemented since 2018 in India, covers more than 100 districts. Again, just to be factually correct, it covers 112 districts. And in these particular 112 districts, certain amount of infrastructure will be provided. And that is the precise reason this is referred to as Aspirational Districts Program. And government says ABP will also be modeled, just a reiteration, ABP will also be modeled on the lines of Aspirational Districts Program. And apart from this, how many blocks or how many districts have been chosen from which states, right? The information is provided. That is not important for UPSC. Most of the districts specifically come from 6 states. That is, more than 50% of these 500 districts that have been chosen as of now are from 6 states. that is Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha and West Bengal. But apart from this, a state government wants to add one more district or one more block, by basically a district within the block, the block within a district into the program. They are allowed to do so. Again, details of this program is yet to be announced. Just certain information has been provided by the government. As and when the information detailed guidelines will be announced by the government, we will have a discussion regarding the program. Next, couple of articles regarding cooperative ministry or cooperation ministry, and all the articles are important. Let's go one by one. First one, cooperation ministry writes new bylaws for uniform adoption by agriculture credit societies. What are the important points here? Last year, somewhere in the month of July, the Ministry of Cooperation introduced a new set of bylaws. That is specifically certain laws which are supposed to be adopted and implemented at the state level. But these laws specifically targeted part of the cooperative structure in India, that is agriculture credit societies, famously known as PACS, Primary Agriculture Credit Societies. Now some of you will be concerned, sir, what is this Primary Agriculture Credit Societies? Just in a nutshell, have a look at the structure here. The cooperative societies are generally divided into two parts, urban and rural. Now focus on the rural here. Rural is further divided into long term and short term, and within the short term it is further divided into three levels or three tiers, and the lowest tier, at the lowest level we will have Primary Agriculture Credit Societies, PACS. Now regarding the PACS, what has been the bylaw? First and foremost, understand the objective here. There are more than 90,000 PACs which are there in India. But Government of India itself says all these 90,000 plus, that is more than 95,000 PACs, these are not operational. These are operational in number, that is 63,000 plus. And not just this, they also have given the data regarding how many people are there in the PACs. That is more than 13 crore people are there. But beyond this, understand the logic now. PACs are generally restricted to work or to operate in one of the areas. For example, a PAC will provide, let's say, fertilizer. It should be involved in the distribution of fertilizer only. If a PAC is involved in providing warehouse, it should be restricted to providing the warehouse facility only. In simple terms, until now, the primary agriculture credit societies, there was a restriction in terms of their operations. Government of India says, one, we want to strengthen the PAC, let's say functioning. We want to strengthen their financials. And second, we want to ensure that more and more PACs will be set up over the next couple of years. The target is in the next 2 years. The number of PACs that has been targeted by the government is actually 3 lakh PACs in India. Now, what reforms have been announced here? One, the Ministry of Cooperation has announced bylaws. Under these bylaws, certain conditions have been relaxed for promotion of the primary agriculture credit societies. For example, earlier I told you, the PACs are generally restricted to work in one area. Now they are allowed to enter into multiple areas so that they will be able to provide more and more services and strengthen their finances. In addition to this, the managing director of the cooperative now must have specific or the certain amount of educational qualification, should have certain amount of specific experience as per the law. The cooperative or the credit societies now are allowed to provide long-term loans provided they take the approval from the DCCBs, etc. So many of these reforms have been announced by government, that is the Ministry of Cooperation, in these bylaws. Now what is the information provided in the article? the Ministry of Cooperation has told all the states to adopt these new bylaws so that there is a uniform law applicable for the regulation or for the promotion of these PSEs throughout India. First point. Second very important point, the Ministry of Cooperation also has written a letter to all the states asking them to promote the development of PSEs. So how the PSEs will be promoted here? Simple. The Ministry of Cooperation has asked all the states if these PSEs can be provided license to set up public distribution shops, if land can be provided for development of infrastructure, right, etc. So these are some of the very important points which have been mentioned in the article regarding Cooperation Ministry writing a letter as well as urging all the states to adopt the new bylaws for promotion of PSEs. Next article again regarding cooperation, right, have a look at this. Government of India, that is the Union Ministry of Cooperation, is planning to set up world's largest university for cooperation in India. Now what is the meaning of this? Annually, right, again the data is given, just have a look at it. Annually there is a huge requirement of experts, right, let's say graduates or certain people of let's say certain workers who have got a sufficient background, sufficient let's say educational qualification to work in the cooperatives. In order to meet that demand, the Union Ministry of Cooperation now has planned to set up the world's largest university for cooperation, and the name of that will be National Cooperative University, and that will be set up through statutory, that is basically passage of the act. So the act will be passed and after that the university will be set up. And apart from this, the information given in the article, again this is just a proposal as of now. In this university by 26-27, 8 lakh certificates will be issued, that is annually 8 lakh certificates will be issued to the candidates, 9,600 degrees would be issued and 16,000 diplomas would be issued, again related to the functioning or the education that has been provided regarding the cooperation or cooperative sector within the domestic market. Right, so these are certain important points regarding the proposal that has been mooted, that has been given by the Ministry of Cooperation. Whether this is going to act, whether the government is going to act on this, whether we will have any announcement in the budget, etc., we will have to wait and see regarding this information. Next, another small tidbit here. The cabinet has approved cooperative societies to promote organic products, seeds and exports. Very recently, the Union Cabinet has approved setting up of 3 very important cooperative bodies. And please understand this, because these cooperative bodies would be set up at the union level, the government says these will be set up under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 2002. Now a simple point here, whenever there is a cooperative, right, or let's say cooperative society which works in a single state, it is the responsibility of the state government to provide recognition and the certification to the cooperative society. Why? The state will have a law regarding cooperative sector. But whenever these cooperatives are going to work in multiple states, more than one state, in simple terms, multi-state cooperatives, these are registered under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 2002 passed by the Union government. Now, the 3 cooperative society bodies that the government has proposed are National Multi-State Cooperative Export Society, National Multi-State Cooperative Organic Society and National Multi-State Cooperative Seed Society. And the name itself, look at the name itself, you will realize what is the objective of these cooperative societies. For example, the first is related to promotion of exports. The second one is associated with providing, let's say, certification and ensuring that quality organic products are promoted from these cooperatives. And the third one is basically related to seed and the technology related to the seed. So these are the three cooperatives which have been approved by the Union Cabinet. And again, this is just an approval now. In the coming days, you will read more and more individually on all of these cooperative societies. Now, the last article for the day, inflation rate in the domestic market. That is for the month of December. Right, have a look at this. For the month of December, the retail inflation. What is retail inflation? CPI. The retail inflation that is recorded is the lowest in the 12 months of 5.72%. It's a reason to cheer, as well as certain concerns have been raised regarding this data. Let's look at both the sides here. First, the reason to cheer is that for second consecutive month, the retail inflation rate has been below 6%. That is, in simple terms, starting from the month of January in the year 2022. I'm talking about calendar year. Right, so starting from the month of January 2022, the retail inflation rate has been over and above 6%. And why that is important? 6% is the target, highest level of the target that has been decided under the inflation targeting or the monetary policy framework agreement. Now, because the inflation rate was consistently above and over 6%, Reserve Bank of India did not have any option but to increase the interest rates in order to contain or control the inflation. Now, this is the second consecutive month, that is in the month of November and followed by it in the December, inflation rate has been below 6%, which is a good news. Which doesn't mean, understand this, which doesn't mean RBI is not going to, or which doesn't mean that RBI is going to stop the rise in the interest rate. It is going to hike the interest rates even in the coming months because of concern over inflation. The only thing is that the hikes, right, how much basis points the hike can be done now would be lower. That is in simple terms. Generally, in the last couple of months, we have seen RBI increasing the repo rate by 50 basis points, 40 basis points, etc. Now, rather than increasing the interest rate by 50 or 40, you might see RBI increasing the interest rate by 25 basis points. That is a good news. Again, please understand, don't say, sir, but the interest rates are increased. Compared to, let's say, 50 basis point hike, 0.5% rise in the repo rate, 0.25% is better because the loans will not become very, very costly when the hike would have been 50 basis points. That is the first very important point. Second very important point here is, though the inflation rate is under the control, I hope you understand this, though the inflation rate is under control, it doesn't mean that we are out of the woods. It doesn't mean that inflation is not a problem even today. There is a big problem related to even this data of inflation. What is the big problem that I'm talking about? Have a look at this. Please look at the data regarding the food inflation. Food inflation, CPI, food inflation. You will realize that the inflation rate, CPI inflation rate, no doubt has moderated. Even today, the CPI food inflation rate is a problem. I hope you understand. The CPI food inflation rate is a problem. CPI food inflation rate, which had increased to a very high level, now, right, no doubt, compared to earlier months, it is contained. But even today, within the CPI food, right, I hope you understand, within the CPI food, you will see that there are certain commodities whose prices are very, very high. I am getting into details because some of you look at the graph and say, sir, but compared to earlier situation, CPI food, that is CPI food inflation is lower. You should be very happy about it. Why are you not happy? Reason is very simple. When you talk about CPI food inflation, there are certain important commodities, right? Have a look at this. Vegetables, right? Cereals, milk, spices, etc. No doubt, right? The inflation rate is greatly affected by many of the commodities, many of the components within the basket of CPI. But in recent times, the inflation rate for the cereals, milk, spices have increased by 13.8%, 8.5% and 20.3% respectively. So no doubt CPI food inflation has come down, but within that also there are certain components that could cause trouble to the Indian economy in the coming days by pushing up the inflation rate and affecting the common man such as you and me. That is one more point. Next important point, what about the core inflation? Right? What about the core inflation here? Right? Even the core inflation, have a look at this. Even the core inflation has been 6.1%. Right? Again, one more concern. For the month of November, it was 6%. Now it has increased to 6.1%, which means even excluding food and fuel articles, that is out of all the basket for CPI, if you exclude food and fuel articles, what is left out is nothing but the core inflation. So the core inflation for the month of November was 6%. Now it has slightly moved up to 6.1%. which is again a cause of concern, for the government as well as for the policymakers in India. So these are certain very important points regarding the inflation rate for the month of December. So these are the various articles as well as the questions related to these articles for the time period of 7th January to 13th January 2023. If you like the initiative, hit the like button. Provide your valuable comments in the section below, and if you're ready to subscribe to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS YouTube channel, kindly do it now. Thank you. Have a great day.